really want to thank you for taking my call a few weeks back when I saw some of your work. And I got to be honest with you, and just for the audience, I first saw some of the pictures of what you and your team have been unearthing down in Mexico on Facebook, on like the stories or the reels or whatever it is. And
Yep.
my first thought was this is absolute BS. The first image I saw was of the sarcophagus with the pyramid in the ground. I'm like,
Yeah.
and it had some like weird music behind it. I was like, well, this is nonsense. That was my first gut reaction to all of this. And so I paid it no attention, even though it was like everywhere in my feed. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm following this sort of stuff. And then I saw you on Matt Bell's podcast and I started paying attention a little bit. And I was like, man, this guy doesn't sound like he's full of it. Why don't I take a little bit of a deeper look? And that's what I did. And I got to tell you, some of the stuff just seems really weird, really compelling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think you've got I think you've got a huge problem on your hand down there. This is all real. This is way too much. So for the
All right.
audience, let's just introduce you, tell everybody who you are and how you
Yeah.
got involved in this. And then we're going to start bringing up some pictures.
Right on. Yeah. My name is Michael Forrest, and I own a cannabis company in Washington, and grown for over 10 years. And I started with the medical and that sort of thing. Had no interest in aliens or history. I've always been kind of interested in Egyptian stuff since I was a little kid, but never wanted to go to school for it by any means, and never wanted to get that deep with it. Same thing with religion and all that sort of stuff. So when I seen these pieces, my buddy came and he had a friend that went down and did an expedition with a gentleman named Mark Russell, who's an archaeologist, and there was a few other people with them. One of my scientists, Trevor Millar, and they documented a trip and an expedition to Abuelos de Jalisco, and they pulled out these pieces. This was back in like 2018, 2017, and Trevor worked for Nassim Harriman at the time. And so they pulled these pieces out, and they'd done quite a few tests and research on them. Scott Woltar carbon dated them on his TV show, and so my buddy's trying to tell me all this, and that there's carbon dates that are 10,000 plus years old, and I'm like, oh sure, bro, yeah, this would be all over the news if any of that was even a possibility of truth. Like this is ridiculous. Like you're being conned somewhere, buddy. And I actually shook his hand on a $5,000 bet that I could prove that it was BS. So I'm with you on that sort of first impression. And a lot of people have it. I mean, I get, people saying this on the comments, more often than not, probably, honestly. But what's interesting is like you say, when you start to let the seed germinate and start to see, just like I did as a stone collector. My grandpa was a miner, and so there was always specimen around the house of opals and different things. And jade, jade was my favorite as a kid. So, seeing some of these pieces some across my table, researching them as mineral specimens alone were impressive. Let alone these things are carved. That's ridiculous. So it definitely had a resonance that none of the crystal shows, never at Tucson, never anywhere had I ever seen anything like this, and it just kept unfolding. And at the time, we didn't have, Egyptian depictions and Anunnaki stuff. And, it looked like little aliens, little gray aliens. And that's why I called the website Alien Carvings, because I was researching these things that looked like aliens. Little did I know that there was ancient races that were potentially killed off by these Anunnaki, that this actually could be an advanced ancient race. And that's why, a lot of our Stone Age megalithic structures that we don't know how to build today are in the condition that they are, and why these civilizations just kind of disappeared, and that knowledge with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. We have these giant monuments here, and like they've stood the test of time, but all the little knickknacks, the little artifacts, the tools, all that stuff just is gone in the dust. And
Right.
so the structures have lasted. And so what you're unearthing there is quite astonishing. There is depictions there of flying saucers, non-human intelligence on there. It's the wildest stuff I've ever seen. I think that's why most people have these knee-jerk reactions to it, because they're just like, this is too much. There's no way.
Right.
But when you see the sheer amount of this stuff
Yeah.
coming out of the ground, it's not like it's one or two things that somebody made in a garage and they're just trying to plug. There's thousands and thousands of this stuff. And
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, the two locations are Tula Hidalgo and Alisco. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
In
Those are the two
Mexico.
primary ones that have been researched. There's Guerrero and the Miko-chan and Awaka that have all had pieces that have been documented as well, but haven't been deeply researched. We carbonated one of the books from Guerrero, and it came back consistent with the dates of the geopolymers and the resins from Tula. That was interesting to see that correlation. To pull that off is another stretch in itself.
Okay. So while we rip the Band-Aid off here, I want to pull up the video of this one piece that you have, and it's got the crystal in it, and it's, to me, it's one of the most staggering pieces that you've got. I know you've got some wild stuff, but I think this will be good for the audience to see what we're kind of talking about here. And
Yeah.
maybe I can play this video, and you can kind of talk us through this. I think this video is about 3 minutes long. What are we looking at here?
This is well, it's an electrical device. It's an elaborate sculpture that has magnetism components. There's that ball that sits there. There's a thing you can see here, though. I think they're going to spin it in a second, but it moves these balls around. And there's gears that are unfunctional, or at least that we don't know or see a function for them. Why they're there, we have no clue. There's a depiction on the box. There's a large box that weighs about 300 pounds. And this unit here weighs, I think, around 80 pounds for the unit. And it goes inside of this big box. And there's that little, crown, I'm going to call it, that sits on the top there that has the hole in it with what looks to be a crystal on the inside. And it is indeed a crystal. And so inside of this thing, there's complex like components, I guess we'll call it. They're very primitive. Like the wire, there's I'm not sure of the inside of the crystal. The other one that we had done that was inside of a crystal, it almost looks as if there's like a diode inside, but it's not like a diode that we use with a chip. It's completely primitive. There's no crimping, there's no anything. And what's really bizarre is there's no insulation either. And the way the filament is created, it's nothing it's definitely along similar lines as what we have today. But in this case, there's no insulation, and how they're generating the power for these things. That crown actually, the crystal lights up. They're going to turn off the lights here in just a second. You'll see what I'm saying. So this thing generates electricity. The green light behind it there's from the turntable that this thing is on. But yeah, you can see there that this crystal has been modified with a
You pulled
light.
this out of the ground and it was in a box, right? When it was
Yes.
unearthed?
Yes.
Okay. And now what is this made? So is it the geopolymer that this is made of?
Well, that's what we call it because it's the closest thing that we can manufacture and classify this as. However, I don't think Joseph Davidovich would say this is a geopolymer classically in terms of what he's researched and understood. But we do know with like the Roman concrete and certain sites around the world, like down in Bolivia, there, what is it? That's slipping my mind, but where the H blocks
Damascus?
are. No, it's Lake Titicaca area there.
Oh, yeah,
Tiwanaku.
yeah.
Tiwanaku. Gosh, I
Yeah,
couldn't think of
Tiwanaku.
it. But nonetheless, that place there has some really interesting compositions, kind of like this, where they were making stone. It seems like, and they were able to get these cuts and forms, and it's very bizarre. So this material here, you can see how it has an orange surface. That's a rust. There's an iron oxide content. There's chromium, iron, silica, aluminum, and the way it's put together is really an engineered product, like the Roman concrete was at the time, or something of that nature. It's really interesting. It's very crystalline based though, and that's why it's not a geopolymer. The amount of crystal inside of this and the metals and things, it doesn't follow suit to that at all. But that's what we have the closest thing to it, right? So it is crushed up like calcite and different rocks that have been bonded together with something, and that something could be blood. A lot of blood sacrifice occurred in these areas. We know that they were using the blood to appease the gods. Well, these pieces depict gods all over them, and they're the lesser gods that are known to in Egypt and Mesopotamia, and as well as to the Mayans and the Aztecs and so on. It's a convergence of all of this, including even Indian avatars and relations to Shiva and Shakti. So It's really a collage of things, which takes me to the story of Babel and the fall of Babel, that maybe this was the setback, because clearly with these megalithic sites, we went backwards at some point in terms of how we were able to construct things and what we knew versus what we know now, or what we can pull off, right?
Exactly. Can that piece be dated? Is it
Absolutely.
possible?
It has been dated 30,
Okay, so
or actually
what is it dated to?
43,000 years old. Yeah. Yeah. We,
So
we, we,
and so how so you have to explain it, but how are we dating this to 43,000 years?
and normally you
You
can't
date
dig
that
rock.
material? Is it the resin?
It's the bonder. So if they used blood to bind this stuff together, or that was one of the ingredients, maybe they used gums and different other organic ingredients. But yeah, that was the binder to keep this together. So they crushed stone, maybe heated it up somehow. It was an alchemical reaction, it seems like, because there's rapid cooling or rapid bubbling on the surface, which is similar to what you would find when you put a part A and a part B resin. If you were to make a resin table or something, you pour these two things together, they generate heat and bubble on the surface. That's why you got to have them, with special, mats underneath or whatever to keep everything chemically correct. And so this is just a form of alchemy we believe that they knew of, that was able to create this stone.
And who's date? So can you tell everybody? I think you're having this dated at universities, correct?
Yeah, University of Georgia has done a primarily, well, I would say like 75% of the dates. Arizona as well, and Saram Laboratories, Cotella Laboratories, and I'm missing one in there.
And you were privately financing the excavation at one of these sites. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've donated money to the families that own land so they can fund expeditions to go dig. I don't personally dig, and I don't fund them to do that. I'm donating money to them, and then that's what they do essentially with it, or whatever. They fund their family so they can continue to own that land, I guess, really more than anything, because it's already their land. It's private land that's being dug on in almost all the cases. There are other rogue people who will go out there and dig on the archaeological land and record it and send it to us, trying to be like those guys that own the land. And it's not something that we encourage. There's been a couple of them that I've posted because it shows clearly the pyramid right in the back, with these pieces coming out with the boga chip on there and things like that's really relevant to me. I mean, believe it or not, but I think it's really important that we know that that's a potential, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the bogey here, and I want to get to one of the skulls that shares a little bit of that same symbology on the bogosphere, because
Yeah.
that's I interviewed Jaime Musan this past summer about the bogosphere, and
Awesome.
yeah, and it's interesting because I think that the University of Georgia came back in the last month or two with the same sort of readings from the resident inside
Right.
there. You were able to get some readings from that, and they dated that one, I think, 11,600
There's
something.
12,006, I think. Yeah.
Well, Galvin said, yeah. So there you go. If you ask Dr. Stephen Greer, I mean, if he says they're already there, they think this is an authentic thing that was what was going on in those videos, flying on its own using some sort of static electro
Yep.
equipment thing to reduce the mass to have this thing fly. Um,
Yep.
and here you go, you finding things in Mexico that have the same sort of symbology on that. So I want to get to that in a second. I want to pull up one of these other crystal skulls. This one is absolutely beautiful. Can you tell to us a little bit about this one?
Yeah.
First of all, what is this made of?
It's amethyst on the inside. So it's like a huge quartz and amethyst geode, essentially.
And so this has been carved into an elongated skull and has got artwork all around it, correct?
Yeah. 100% carved. It glows. It's about 85 pounds.
What
It's
do you mean it
huge.
glows? Like glows in the dark?
Yeah. With a UV light, there's a material that's a strontium based material that they would fuse onto the stone, oftentimes in the cracks and crevices. So when you hit it with a black light, you can clearly see all the carvings. They just pop out.
Oh, cool.
How they were able to see that is a whole nother discussion. But
What do
I'll
you
I'll
mean?
leave it with that.
Are you saying there's more artwork when you flash a black light on this thing?
Oh, on almost every piece from all the locations.
Well, so
There's
wait a minute. Are they carvings or is it something
Yeah.
else?
Yeah. Mostly just the carvings but I mean, the areas between the carvings, like there's different shadings and
More
different,
detail.
yeah, it really adds a textured detail to the portrait, you know?
Oh, yeah. So you got to ask, I mean, how are they doing that?
Yeah. Well, we have a pretty strong idea, luciferance and the word luminescence comes from this thing called luciferance. And this type of light was ancient. And I think that we see angel type looking beings on all these pieces. We have books in the Bible as well as these Anunnaki beings that have angel wings that are known in our history. So this is even Isis in the Egyptian culture is depicted with angel wings in different periods. So these type of beings might have taken this form in this part of the world. And what's interesting though is consistently the Watchers, the Shining Ones, or the Anunnaki angels have halos, but this light that surrounds these beings is consistently documented from culture to culture. And so we believe that when these beings would interact with the hominids that were the creations of them, likely they had multiple different species, which is why we have lots of different Paracas structured skulls. We have different Nazca mummies, some of them very small, some of them very large. And they were tinkering with the genetics and interacting with the man. And that would be known as Zepteki or Tepzeki or whatever it is in the Egyptian, or the golden era in the Greek, where God walked with man. That I believe is what we're seeing here. So when these beings would come, they would make these pieces illuminate by being in their presence. And so it was like an idolism to them. And if they were using blood as the binder, then the Babel story, like I said, comes to mind, because this could be the stone idols that they were making to worship the gods. And they were using blood and magic to do that. And that's where the whole blood magic rituals and the occult stuff comes from, right?
Interesting. And this one, I mean, this is wild here. I mean, if you just look right here, I mean, that looks like your typical gray alien and it's got like wings on it. So
Yeah.
this is very interesting because, we've got I talk about disclosure these days. And then, here you are coming out with this stuff right alongside of all this. You've been doing this for what, about 5 years? When did this stuff start surfacing? Was it longer than 5 years ago?
Yeah, no, there's my scientist has been in this. He works for Nassim Harriman for like 9 years doing this before I even ever met him. Yeah, it's been going on for decades. I think Jaime Maussan just came out. I don't know if you saw his
I
disclosure
saw
about
it.
these pieces. Yeah, which was a super big weight off my shoulders, because it's like, why aren't the people in Mexico talking about it? This should be all over Jaime's TV show. And come to find out, he was put in really bad positions because of it back in 2009. So when he came out in 2009 and Fernando Carrera put it on his terrestrial TV show, I mean, they took heavy flack. In fact, when Jaime brought the Nazca mummies to the public, a lot of people called Jaime a fraud, if you remember. A
How
lot
they
of people
got
don't know why they called him a fraud, but here, if we go back in time, it was because of these pieces right here.
Yeah, and so right after he did that, people started saying, he has a history of doing this and that and the other
Yeah,
thing. And I was like, look, this guy's putting his money where his mouth is, and he's doing more for these subjects than I think really anybody. He's not afraid. He's like, let's do some science with this stuff. Let's show people what we've got. And people were ridiculing him for that.
I
And
know.
I thought that was extremely unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met him a couple of times. He's been nice enough to field some of my text messages and questions. And I did ask him about some of these pieces that you had, maybe about a month ago. And he was a little bit evasive about it. But then,
Yeah.
like you said, a couple of weeks ago, I saw him come out and sort of endorse this a little bit. So he's
Yep.
probably done a little bit more homework and realized that, okay, there's something going on here.
Oh, there's something coming. Yeah, it's coming. It's really great. Like, a lot of things are coming together, and a lot of people are coming together on this finally to put it to bed finally, I believe, because it's definitely evaded. And you know what? Like you said just a few minutes ago, disclosure is supposed to be upon us, and everybody's talking about it, but nobody really knows what it is. They think they do with aliens and stuff. And that's why I called this alien carvings, because I thought these were aliens. But come to find out, We believe the gray aliens or the Ajiji, which was a species created by the Anunnaki that grew to be too strong. They were amphibious and they grew too strong and actually revolted against the Anunnaki and they wiped them out. And so we think that some of them escaped. We see depictions of stargates and like you said, UFOs, and they clearly were more advanced than us. In some of the depictions, they had space needle looking Jetson houses. And I mean, you pretty much go fish through this stuff and it's sci-fi in a nutshell. I mean, so many Hollywood movies touch on this. Well, and children's shows. I've got a 4-year-old and I'm just sitting here watching some of these movies and wow, they're hitting on so much of these things. Like it's soft disclosure all over the place to try to preparate people, I believe, for the actual truth. And this is disclosure. And it's real, like, just like, we both thought it was not, it's real friction to accept this. I think because it goes deeper than just aliens. It's spiritual too.
Yeah, 100%. It's you're working on something here that is really gonna blow the doors off this whole thing, in my opinion. 'Cause it's just so in your face. I want to pull this other crystal skull here real quick. Is this one made of obsidian?
It is. Yep.
Okay, so this is black. How, like on the Fordness scale, how hard is obsidian?
It's not as hard as normal glass. I think it's like a 6.5 on the Mohs scale. So it's glass, but it's a softer glass. It can be carved or scratched, I should say, with stainless steel, whereas normal glass can't. So it kind of sits in between there.
Okay. And if you look on top of this thing, I mean, this looks eerily similar to the symbology on the Boogosphere, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we've actually found quite a few of these different they're like diagrams or chip diagrams. And what's funny here is this has actually got metallic. We print our chips on a board because of its conductivity and because of its easy to produce nature. In this case here, this stone is being possibly utilized in that fashion. We find that some of these are actually conductive. Like they could be functional to some degree.
Some of
There's
them are
rumors.
functional.
It's possible.
It's
Some
possible.
people said that they used crystal skulls like computers back in the day. Like this is
I've
something
heard
that
this.
people talk about. I don't, subscribe to this necessarily, but seeing this, it's interesting. And then we also have the story in Revelation that's the mark of the beast found on the foreheads and that you needed it in order to be able to buy and sell and certain things. So if this ship here, it might be the creation, the demiurge creation that was talked about in the Gnostic texts as well. Like this mark of the beast. The beast might be the demiurge, I guess, in this case, is what I'm trying to say.
Tell
And
me what the demiurge is real quick.
the demiurge was a creation. Essentially, it was a godhead that was created. So we have, in the Bible, there's Jesus, who's the Word of God, but God itself is this ineffable, invisible thing, right? That nobody can even see or bear to see or whatever. Right? It's too much to fathom, I think, is what it says in there, right? So this unfathomable thing supposedly had these thoughts, and these thoughts manifested as what are called archons. And so there's the archon of wisdom, which was named Sophia, which is a translation in Hebrew for wisdom. And she fell to Satan. When Satan and Michael battled, the tail of Satan drug a bunch of angels with, and they're called the fallen angels. Some of them were bad, some of them were good. She was one of them that fell. And she was so fascinated with the Godhead that she created this beast, this computer framework type thing that we believe could be what this Booga chip is. And that's what they used to govern the species. The Ajiji were a slave species, is what it says in the Enuma Elish and the Atra Hasis, which are both ancient texts and stories from the Mesopotamian culture. And so it's definitely something that we have to look at as a possibility that this could be how they controlled things. And, the geometry of this specific thing isn't far from what we use today. And it could actually have purpose and meaning beyond what we know.
Fascinating. I had another question there. I just lost it. It's had to come back to me. All right. I want to look at this other crystal skull here before we get into some of the
Yeah,
flying
that's the
skulls.
glow in the dark. Yeah.
If this one glows in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. This one looks extremely non-human and it's glowing in the dark. What is this one made of?
Yeah, that one there's made out of the geopolymer. So it's that orangish brown, yellowy stone.
And the obsidian can't be the one we just looked at. That one cannot be dated, correct? Because it's stone.
It can't. No.
But this one can.
Yep.
And what same sort of deal, 40 some thousand years?
That one
Yep.
hasn't been dated. Yeah,
Okay.
that's actually in a friend's collection, which he's just starting. December 1st, he got a bonus and was going to spend it on doing research. So
Oh, got it.
it's expensive. It takes a lot to, when you're trying to collect and you're not a researcher, and then you're like trying to take money away from the pieces and pushing forward down there. It's really hard to balance the load.
Sure. I bet. Yeah. All right. This next picture here. I mean, this is bananas to me.
It
First of
is.
all, what is this carved on? And then let's talk about some of the pictures that are on here. What is this?
That material is like a shale, I believe is what it's called, which is just a type of like a type of sandstone. It's pretty soft. I think it's like a 4 or something like that on the Mohs scale.
Okay.
And
And then in
we
the upper
find these in
left,
a
go ahead.
Wayless a lot. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so say that, sorry, say that again.
Oh, I was just saying these are found in a Wayless, this type of black tablet, and these type of depictions with, I mean, this seems like planetary infusion. I mean, sometimes it's got like asteroids and comets coming into these planets and those planets being destroyed. And a lot of planetary juggling is shown with these UFOs. And also you can see the Egyptian god Anubis down in the bottom left. And he's a figure that is all over this stuff. And you can see he's holding a sphere in his hands.
Right.
And what's interesting is when you read the Pistis Sophia, which is a Gnostic text, it talks about the reign of the sphere. When Jesus died, he went down and put the fallen in their place, essentially, in this book. And but there's a reference to the reign of the sphere, and so we find these spheres all over the place. We've been documenting these since the very beginning. Nassim Haramein and Klaus Dona presented items with spheres on them, but it wasn't until January that we saw that chip design. So that the chip that's on the Boogosphere, we found it in January. The Boogosphere crashed in March.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the timing, yeah, that's another thing I've kind of delved into on this podcast. I've got some friends here that are into some very wild stuff. Do you think any of this has anything to do with retrocausality? Do you think the timing of this is all very strange?
It's orchestrated. Yeah.
Do you think it's
And
orchestrated?
I would almost guarantee it, because when the booby chip stuff started coming out, some guys, they use GPR and radar and go out there and document it and do it all proper. But a lot of the guys that are down in that area, they don't have that kind of money, and they use pendulums. There's been this technique of like dowsing or using a pendulum to go out there, and they ask the spirits or the gods to help them find these pieces, and they show them the way. And I didn't believe in that at all. It was really hard for me to accept this, but I've seen it with water and certain things with really good scientific backing to it. And then the other thing is you use a tri-field meter, and there's electromagnetic frequencies that are emitted from these pieces, as well as radio frequencies. And so I'm going to jump kind of back 1 second to tell you a little bit more about that box that had the electrical light in it and how that works, that we think anyways. We've done x-rays, and there's a copper tube in there with a magnet, and this thing is literally supported by the geopolymer. So it's not drilled in there. There's no drill holes. There's no scars. So clearly they were able to put the stuff in there before it was dry and mold around it. And then it's completely encapsulated into this thing. And because of the metal content, like I said, aluminum, iron, chromium inside of here, if they were to use a zinc cathode pentode situation, would this act like a potato and create, type of I don't know if it's piezoelectricity at that point, or there's a type of electricity that could be being harnessed because of this specific recipe of geopolymer. We know it has a UV reaction, and we know it emits radio and EMF. So it's possible that the geometry and certain things that they knew things that are beyond us. Also, what's bizarre is there's been about 6 of these devices found. A couple of them have been shipped to Poland in different areas, and they've stopped working. I've got a couple of them here. They work great. I did a stress test for 13 or 14 days before I pulled the thing off of there, and it worked nonstop. So it could have to do with the ley lines and the magnetic frequencies of the earth. If they were able to tap into that with this type of situation, the amount of voltage that that produces is only about 0.21 to 0.25, which really isn't even enough to put a flash in an LED. So how they're
Right.
getting that kind of light out of there is something we still have to research as well.
That's amazing. All right. So just getting back to this piece, I mean,
Yeah.
you obviously have some sort of, I mean, this looks like you've got planetary alignments and look at there's energy going from the planets, going to the flying saucer that were left. I mean,
Yeah.
this is so mind boggling that,
That's geoengineering, if I had to say it myself. Like they are prepping for life or getting them put into position. Our moon is probably a good hint here. Our moon is so perfect in size. It's set in the right place between the sun. All these things you could go on and on and on about, kind of like the pyramids. There's ratios and golden theories and all these things, right? That make
yes,
these very beautiful achievements. So it's almost as if this is part of the orchestration of how all this is unfolding. And so back to the pendulum, we found Ouija boards and other type of occult things that are based. You saw that ball that spins with the magnet. Maybe that's like a prediction device or some sort of. There's all kinds of like fortune telling devices and things like that. So it's possible that the spirits on the other side are guiding us to these pieces in a set way to show us the disclosure one way or another. That's one thing that came up in the congressional hearings, is that this was going to be shown to the people one way or another at some point, and whether they do it or not. And I think this could be it happening by default, possibly.
yeah. And this is one of these themes that comes up is who's in control of disclosure, right? And so a lot of people
Yeah.
think whatever the phenomenon is and has always been sort of in control of how this plays out. And so, yeah, I find it interesting that, the boogosphere comes up and that your artifacts start to be on Earth all around the same time.
Yeah, and floods of them with the Bogut ship all of a sudden after it crashes. I mean,
that seems a little
hundreds of
formal.
them. Yeah, it really made me it made me question everything all over again. Like I just got back from San Diego, had all this science, was absolutely confident, and then this type of stuff just comes out from people that I know and trust down there, really, really faithfully, that are giving me proper evidence, and then we get science on these pieces with proper dates, and I can't argue it at this point. It definitely seems like it's a control. And if it is the mark of the beast, then that would make sense of how it's being orchestrated in this fashion for sure.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, this next piece here. What is this guy doing in this chair? Does he have a visor on? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, this is like space travel, I'm guessing. We find these masks on quite a few different beings. Now, if you think about this, it seems crazy, I know, but go to Turkey and there's a 5,000-year-old statue with what looks to be like a spaceman mask on. And we find similar looking statues as well in Tula and Guerrero with quartz crystal masks and different fluorite masks and things. And in Abuelos, that really details a mesh looking mask on a lot of these pieces. So yeah, clear, he might be in some sort of ship. I mean, there even looks to be like a yoke of a steering wheel or something there. So I don't even know what to think.
We let's go off topic for 1 second.
Yeah.
Do you think there's
Do I think
artifacts in the way?
I really do. Yeah. So I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan. And Stanley Kubrick has a recorded thing to a lawyer that came out 20 years after his death. It's quite the admission. And he said that he filmed the moon landing and they had to do it for the Cold War and stuff. Well, that might be what he knew and what he was told, and they shut him up because it wasn't the truth. And in reality, he might have filmed it, but they might have only used parts of it. And they might have really went there, but they had to have footage to show, because they couldn't show the structures and the things that were being found or seen logically. They might have
That's
went
for
through
the
the
camp
research
behind it.
and yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I'm kind of in the camp that we went and maybe they found some stuff there and it was a little unnerving. And they had all this extra B-roll of footage he was doing, and the way to say we never went, or to sow confusion. so
Yes.
that you get yourselves talking about that. Did we go or did we not go? And you don't ask the real questions is what the hell is actually there? Why is the room
Right.
so weird?
Right.
That's the real conversation.
Yeah. And that's typical Anunnaki deception. It's a right or a left world, but the reality is it's a 360-degree up, down, left, right, midway. I mean, where are all these other directions when it comes down to politics and stuff? So they really want the division and the duality, and that was what Saturn created in this thing, because Saturn was the epitome of dualism, and he was really evil, or it demiurge was evil, whatever this creation, this godhead that she created it by herself, and she was supposed to create it with her Sayagi, which was the Christos, or what the Christ consciousness is. Like the conscious that came down to fulfill the human role of Jesus Christ was known as the Christos to the Gnostics, and or the Logos, one of the two. I'm probably butchering that. Don't quote that part. I apologize, but one of those two. And so the relation there of her doing this created the unbalance of dualism. So that's why she fell to Satan. And the thou shalt not judge commandment really brings it to my mind of, okay, well, it sucks that the queen of heaven fell to Satan, but God, if it's really this ineffable being, would have already seen that. He's the all seeing. So clearly, being the embodiment of wisdom, she would need to fall in order to get back up. And I think that's exactly where we're at right now. We're in that phase where we're gaining wisdom. That's where no matter where we go, what we do, we learn every minute of every day.
Having that's true. Even if you're not in school, you're out there in the world surviving and you're learning something.
In jail, locked up in a cell in isolation, you're still gaining and learning and going forward, even if it's just all up here. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Okay, I got a couple more pictures here I want to look at, and I
Yeah.
was just thinking, as we were talking there, there was another video of an object, and you had to help me find it. It's going to be the one where you shine the light on the dial and it spins.
Yeah, this thing was crazy.
Let's finish with that one because that one's kind of mind boggling. But
Yeah.
let's look at this one here for a second because here you've got more flying saucer
This is a great
and
example.
Mayan sort of with Egyptian iconography. Or what are we looking at?
Yeah, that's why I say this could be the one language, one race thing that was before Babel. All the dialects and all the races and all this division came from this fall of Babel. And at least that's what it says in the legends. And here you see that planet up there with the spaceship, and the planet looks like it's being, I don't know, I mean, blown from the inside. There's huge things coming out, and
Right.
they don't look like any mountains I've ever seen. So that thing being destroyed, could that be Tiamat and the Marduk fight that we hear about in the Mesopotamian, where the heavens and the earth were created? We see these guys juggling around planets and moving things around, and yeah, I mean it's like something straight out of sci-fi. It's so hard to really know. I find it interesting that the one guy on the left is doing a German salute. We find a lot of weird things that the Germans, but I'm not going to say that we find evidence of what Hitler was trying to portray, but I will say that I think he knew about some of this potentially, and that's what drove the passion to find those artifacts. I think he knew there was real truth to that, maybe from, in World War One, there's a lot of mystery of what caused it and what really went on there. And when it ended in Constantinople, which is the last Babylonian stronghold. And the Ottoman conquered Baghdad and Constantinople. So they got all of the Babylonian artifacts. So the fact we're finding Anunnaki stuff here, and what we're finding, they very well could have had stargates and all kinds of stuff. And they were trafficking these items out of there, possibly to Germany and other countries. And that might be what started that whole Thule and different societies that were really into the Ouija boards and occult stuff in Germany. And same with the Saturn worship. Saturn was a key thing. The Holocaust itself, if you look up the definition, it says it's a burnt offering. And I asked ChatGPT, I was like, well, who's the burnt offering to? And it said primarily Saturn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So I just want to bring up this one last photo here, and then I want to go and try and find the that video we're talking about. So this is
Oh yeah.
kind of what I saw. There was a video of this
Yep.
when I looked
It
at
was
kind
my
of
music.
certain.
I composed that weird music, by the way. So that's why it's kind of weird. Every song for these videos, most of them, I mean, some of them are hits, but a lot of them is I composed the music for the video itself.
Okay. Yeah. So this was like this in video form was one of the first things I saw or came across, and I had probably the same reaction that most people who follow these types of topics would have, which was an adverse reaction to this. I see a
Yeah.
pyramid here. I see a sarcophagus with a non-human intelligence on top. My first instinct is this is complete and utter nonsense. But, I started to cover it a little bit since digging into some of this work. What are we looking at here?
Yeah. This was found. They were actually digging a septic tank on this land. It's a guy's yard. You can see the grass at the top. This was a hole they punched in, and the pyramid poked through, and that's when they started really recording hot and heavy because they weren't digging for artifacts at the time. And so they dug that thing down out of there, and the pyramid weighs about 250 pounds. The sarcophagus weighs about 850 pounds. And each one of those plates you can see kind of sticking up there by the guy's head that goes all the way around it. They're actually large geopolymer plates with like a creation story. There's 8 of them, and then a whole entire flooring that goes inside of this thing. And yeah, each one of those plates is 400 pounds.
Wow.
And it's still in Mexico. There's a museum that's going to be created for all of this stuff in Mexico. They've acquired funding, to my knowledge. I'm not exactly sure what status, but to my knowledge is that they broke ground or that they've started the commission of this.
Well, before we go into another video I was talking about, let's talk about that for a second because there's so much of this stuff that's being unearthed there.
Yeah.
You're one person that how many pieces do you have in your private collection?
Probably about 1,000.
Okay. And you're not the only one. There's
No.
there's lots of collectors out there that are accumulating these items.
Yeah. There's
Can we
20
talk
plus
about that for a
thousand
second?
pieces.
What that?
There's 20 plus thousand pieces at least out there that we've documented over the last 6 years. And that's just me. So yeah, it could be really a lot more than that. There's an entire civilization that's under the feet of these people. And yeah, and what's messed up is that they're almost encouraged to get rid of it. You can go dig it up, and as long as you don't disturb sacred remains or pre-Hispanic items, you can pull these items out of the ground because the INA or the INAH, they've put out a letter stating anything that has aliens, UFOs, stuff like that in Mexico, definitely not real. Egyptian, they said this is you're not going to find that there. We've looked all over. We've never seen anything like that, is what they said. So that's where the law is right now. If you send these items through customs, they get inspected. It's got aliens on it. They're never going to think twice about it. So it's
What do
fully
you think?
legal to extort these items right now.
Okay, so it's totally legal to get the items out of there. Are you when you're unearthing this stuff? I think I heard that this stuff looks like maybe it was intentionally buried. Is that because the soil,
Sometimes
volcanic ash type soil?
it varies. So sometimes there's 3 ground floors that have to be penetrated, and there's cave systems and petroglyphs down there. Other times it's 7 or 8 inches in the ground or 10 inches in the ground. And so it really depends. And sometimes there's huge caches of items where they're all just kind of thrown into a dug out hole and then buried. So we think some of that might be from the Spanish that came. We know they were after pagan items, seeing the correlation with the Gnostic and the different pagan gods and things here. Like that's clearly what they were after. With the Crusades and all this, they were trying to get rid of this stuff, maybe for good reason. I'm not going to judge again. I can't. There's still a lot of big holes in the story, but clearly, I think this is what they were after. You know,
And what's all right? So let's talk about this for a second here. So what do you think this means? All of this stuff, what you find, what is it? This a lost way that humanity was communicating with other dimensions? But what do you think, if you could sum it up in what you think this all is, what would you say?
yeah, and that NHI is a complex term for an angel or a demon. I think this is the angels and the demons. And the gods, they called themselves gods because they created this time. Saturn was the god of time, and he's depicted on so many of these pieces. And so that whole story of the divine feminine and the fallen, we have a Holy Ghost in the Catholic, and then there's the Holy Spirit, and some people call it the Divine Mother. There's all these different names for this fallen feminine, and there's not a lot of females out there because of this story. So but again, she's wisdom. And in order to gain wisdom, you have to fall. So I think that's what we're seeing. And as far as different dimensions and the space travel, the Ajiji became very advanced. And I think the Anunnaki had different planetaries. It shows those planets on there being arranged almost like with energy, like you said. Maybe they were creating these solar systems and producing life to have different experiments. That's why we have all these different races and all these different language. They're all trials to see, what's going to succeed, what works. That's how we would do it in a garden. We would plant all these different phenotypes, and we would try to pick the best and breed the ones that work and go from there. Right. So we're kind of in that phase where it's like Jesus saved us in the biblical side of things. And I think that we weren't ready to ascend as masters and become too powerful. Obviously, the Ajiji revolted, and that there was problems. So this transition in between the ages, I think, is what we're seeing. And people like Tesla said he developed a device that could talk to aliens and into a different dimension. And I think that's kind of like the Ouija board and these fallen angels that fell, I think, are still here with us. That's why the angels are on the sideline, but they're on the sideline. They're trapped in a dimension that only if we call out to them, or only if we do these certain rituals or practices, will we see them. And another piece of evidence there would be like Skinwalker Ranch. There's all these phenomenon there on that ranch, and it's because of a curse that was placed by a shaman or an elder witch doctor or something like that against another tribe. It was a tribal war, and they cursed that land. And so again, we're back here with occult curses. And when you place a hex on someone, the hex is on the top of Saturn. It's a weird geomagnetic storm. And if you look at the sigil of Saturn, which is the Star of David, inside of that star is a hex. So when you place a hex on someone, that's the Saturn thing. So I think they're calling upon Saturn to do these things. That's what the whole Moloch sacrificial things are, and all this conspiracy about this elite doing these type of rituals. Like Aleister Crowley, he had Walt Disney and all these people that were going out in the desert. That's where Scientology even came from.
While Hubbard's out there with Jack Parsons doing sex magic in the desert.
They knew, because Crowley went to Egypt and saw an alien. And now we see this with these aliens and all these people. Like, clearly it could have been a jinn, or what the Arabians know of the jinn, and what King Solomon controlled with his ring and stuff. This is heavily documented in the Quran, but not as documented in our texts, like the Bible or in the Jewish text, the Torah.
Fascinating. All right. So let's talk about this for a second. You're shining light on this thing. It's a dish. What is this?
Yeah. So it's using the voltage and the light to create a circuit of some form. And what's bizarre is it's got two. And so if you face that thing in the right direction outside, as the sun moves, it comes up on one side of you. So when it's on that side, it's going to shine more onto the one diode. And then as it goes up over, the horizon, it's going to shine more on the other diode. And so it spins freely if you just put the light on one diode.
Okay.
But if you put the light on both, like out in the sun, it holds it. Like, it's almost like it seizes it up, right? But slowly over time, as the light moves from one diode to the other, it will move the dish. So it's almost as if it's like, how our solar panels follow the sun. It's almost as if they created this type of, an analog way of doing that, I guess, right?
Yeah, that one is absolutely wild.
And so that's one of the ones that stopped working. It was shipped to San Francisco. They had it working in San Francisco for a few days, and it stopped. So I think that one's going to get taken. They're going to saw it in half and see how it works. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. So they can't scan it to see what's inside. And
We've X-rayed. However, there's just certain things that need to be addressed, components, and you can look at it and it looks kind of like this, but is it?
so you're going to saw it half and see what's going on.
I think so. Yeah.
Who owns that piece?
It's a gal that I worked with. She's in San Francisco and has quite the collection. They have a company that's emerging that's going to be doing, different shows and research and stuff.
Is that one of the same people that are trying to do? I mean, obviously you said the government in Mexico says that anything that has alien iconography or Egyptian iconography on there is up for grabs as long as you don't disturb any remains that are there.
Yeah.
Are people going down there, grabbing this stuff, and then is there a plan to like create a museum, like a traveling show with this? Like, what's everybody? Is everybody doing different things?
Some people are trying to activate this stuff. I mean, there's channelers and spiritual people that are like, I got to get my hands on that. And I mean, there's a whole variety of uses and purposes. Some people just wanted to have a piece of history. Other people just that again, there's just a variety of reasons why. There's definitely a lot of people who want to make museums that want to preserve the pieces. They see the truth in it and how it's being suppressed, and that I think a lot of people take that offensively in some aspects, like they don't want that to happen again.
Interesting. So do you think it's a good idea that many different people are gathering these things and trying to do things responsibly and, writing
The
a book
government
about
knows. They
present
clearly
it in a
know.
responsible way?
They clearly know. I mean, I've been loud. I've been so loud. I called customs right away. I'm like, hey, I got these pieces. I'm not real sure. I'm not an art expert. I just need to know, is this good or is this not? And
Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble.
yeah, oh, this is obviously modern, sir. Like so they are just under that interpretation. And I saw that there was things that just didn't set with that. So I think in the future it probably will hopefully, stop. But right now it's probably a good thing because if we know there's a huge religious Catholic thing that happened in Mexico, still to this day, the Catholics have some input on the government in Mexico. And so we also have testification that they knew about this, so that the INAH makes piles. The American archaeologists make piles of these items and they disappear. That the cartels get rid of them and they mix in fakes with the real ones to water it down so they can get rid of them as fakes. And that's what they're trying to do to get rid of as much of this evidence as possible. That's what the elder Toltec said in my book. And I can see evidence of that. There's a lot of people who sell these things and you give them $20,000 in a week. And down there, that's a ton of money to pull some stuff out of the ground. Even if you had to pay 6 diggers, that's a ton of money. And it's gone every time. It's just gone.
Right.
So I don't know if they're having to pay the cartels and appease things, and then they just refuse to talk about it. They're some of the greatest people I've ever met in a lot of these cases. Genuine. I sent my close friend that showed me my very first piece, the guy that I bet. He was going down there to Chichen Itza, and I said, "Why don't you go to Tula, man?" And so we got him all hooked up with a grand tour. He got to meet all the different people. He went digging on his own, pulled out a crystal skull that's significant in terms of what it shows, and it's all documented. So that's really great. But the guys down there were nice enough to say, "Hey, you can stay at my house as long as you want. Come back down anytime. Like you can be a part of this." Like it was very open, and that's just if you were pulling a major hoax, that wouldn't be the way you'd do business.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if someone is doing a hoax, it's beyond elaborate, right? I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
ridiculous. It's just
Yeah.
too
Can't
much. There's too
Panama
much
move
of it.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild. Mike, this was really cool that you came on here and did this. I know that we only scratched the surface of what's going on here, and I'd love to have you back on again so that we can talk about some more artifacts and give us an update on what's going on in the future to be able to that.
Yeah, anytime. There's a lot that's going to unfold here over the next few months before March is going to be a huge month. I mean, March Madness is one to watch for. There's things
So,
in the works.
what predictions do you have about 2026 and disclosure? Do you think predictions?
I know as this topic that there's anthropologists in many high-end degrees, doctorates, PhDs. The research is there. These people have gone down there and personally pulled these pieces out of the ground now. A lot of high-profile names. I'm not going to mention those because I don't want to spoil the surprise or speak for someone else in this case. But just know that this is finally being researched, and I feel like I pushed the snowball to the top of the mountain, and now it's going to roll down. So it's good. We'll definitely have updates.
Well, I appreciate it. I can't wait to hear the updates, and we'll have you back on. So thank
Yeah.
you, Mike. Thanks everybody for checking out the podcast. Yes, have a great night.
Have a good night.